Hey y'all, hope you're doing well today. So in today's message, I wanted to share with you some thoughts on making sure that we are not making ourselves vulnerable to predators, and specifically how we can become more conscious of ourselves and all of these aspects of ourselves that predatory type people can see very clearly about us because they study us. And so it's really just learning more about yourself and being able to identify potential areas that could make you vulnerable to being manipulated. So I hope you enjoyed today's message, and I hope you're doing well today. So, all right, the question to open the discussion with today is there a key that unconsciously unlocks your trust? And this is where we're going to talk about it, but you're going to start to examine, journal about, think on your past when you may have been conditioned by controlling people at some point in your life, specifically those. I feel like conditioning happens mostly when you spend a great deal of time with a person. So like growing up in a particular toxic household with a manipulative, controlling parent or sibling, or it could have even been a friend that you had for many years, right? Which was, turned out to be what you might call a frenemy, but you didn't know that because you were just so trusting, right? And naive and unaware. But anybody that you've spent, it could be a toxic coworker, a boss, a spouse, a partner, anybody you've spent a long time with, I feel like that's where a lot of your conditioning comes from, because it's like they, as part of the manipulation, this is that whole cycle, what they call the love bomb. They reward you for being manipulated. So when you view it from that lens, it's like, wow. That's actually what they're doing when they love bomb you before they then turn around and stab you in the back. It's kind of like, I'm thinking of like some cats, how they, I don't dislike cats. I'm really more of a dog person, but it's like, some cats that I've even had in the past will, like love on you, like rub up against your leg and be so loving and turn right around and bite you for no reason at all, right? Maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's a cat psychologist out there, which is funny that I mentioned that because in my YouTube feed something popped up about a dog psychology, and it was really interesting actually, with regards to keeping yourself safe against a dog that may come at you and charge at you. Yeah, I don't know if you guys just heard that. Somebody just cussed somebody else out in the parking lot here. I'm not real sure what went down, but I'm glad I'm over here out of the way. So I'm not going to edit that out because it's real life. But yes, so knowing yourself, knowing your conditioning, spending the time alone to truly examine your life experiences to be able to identify conditioning within yourself, how you have learned to subdue normal human responses to poor treatment, those kind of things. The ways that you may have been rewarded in the past by someone when they just like that cat, they turn right around and abuse you. And as soon as you're spending time trying to put the pieces together, here they come with another breadcrumb or tiny morsel of something good, which is the reward, right? And then it causes you to dismiss, right? It's like another way of lowering your guard. It's like your guard starts to come up when you experience something that hurtful, that your gut tells you, hang on, something's not right about this treatment. When you start to experience that, it's like the guard starts to come up, and then as soon as it's like on the way, it's like they can smell it. They can see this process happening in you, and then they come at you with some tiny little morsel to get you to lower it again, right? Because you're so neglected for just kind treatment, which everybody deserves. They'll even shame you for expecting normal human decency, that kind of treatment, when everybody is deserving of that, just as a baseline. You know what I mean? Just a baseline. Well, I wouldn't say everybody, because these kind of people, predators, are not worthy of it, right? But yeah, so I want you to think of this process as engaging your conscious awareness like shining a flashlight into the dark areas, right? So first, we have to identify the dark areas. That's number one. And this might actually, dark areas meaning the parts about yourself that you're not aware of. And this, unfortunately, may require sort of like thinking like a manipulative person. Which is why we spend the time to learn about these people. This is why we spend the time to learn their tactics, right? At some point, then we learn to put a guard up, like especially if you've exited, if you've already gotten out of this bad situation where your guard would start to go up, and then it would, they would cause it to come down and back and forth and back and forth, and you were yo-yoed in that manner. And your trust was just, freely given out of love, without being earned. You understand now that it's, it really should be earned, those kind of things. So let's say you've left these toxic situations, relationships, whatever it is, which is really more along the lines of what my channel is about, is after you've exited and you're growing in yourself and you're sharpening your discernment and all this. So at some point, because a lot of times you may even feel like you didn't even have a guard up at all. For a lot of your life, you were just totally open and totally freely trusting and everything. So it may have actually taken some work, conscious effort on your part to create or to construct your shield, right? Now, I want you to think about this. Okay, so let's say you've got that shield in place. Okay, it's now our job to learn how to guard that which guards us. So now you've learned to be more reserved, to not spill so much out and just be an open book to everyone before they've earned your trust. So you've kind of learned to kind of dial back, what you share with people, and you're observing, you're listening, double what you're speaking. And so you've got this guard up. Okay, so the next step is to learn to guard your guard your shield. All right, so we do that by examining what would cause us to lower our shield. For example, if you were neglected for a long time, right, either growing up in childhood, marriage, long-term friendship, whatever it is, if you were neglected, like from the things that you needed as a normal human being, right, if they were withheld from you, I'm going to give you some examples. It might be something like if your parents largely ignored you, they just acted like you didn't even exist, then you may really appreciate, you may not go and seek attention like a narcissistic type person, but you may really appreciate it when someone just acknowledges that you're here. They acknowledge, they appreciate your input or your insights, or that kind of just being seen as a human being, because you were so ignored growing up, as an example, right? It's a normal part of development for children to want attention, and they're on the extreme end of the spectrum here, wanting to be the center of attention. That's just part of that stage of development, as part of growing the human psyche, right? Getting rooted in and grounded in their own confidence. their own self-esteem. That's important. And so if a person was neglected in that area, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to turn out narcissistic. It's just that may be a weak area for you. You know, if you just didn't ever feel seen as a child, just to feel seen and validated. Of course, these manipulators employ fake sympathy, and it's so obvious and it's sickening. It's obvious a lot of times in hindsight, right? If you're hungry to, like, say you've really experienced some hardships in life and your closest friends just kind of laughed it off and minimized it or whatever, if along comes this person, and here's what's tricky. We're going to get into this more. This is further on my notes, but a lot of times these people can seem like the best friend you've ever had, because they're just so attuned to you, and you're not used to that. And so you know, you may start to open up to them because again, they're so attuned. They're validating your existence if that's one of your weak areas, and then they may start to employ this fake sympathy. And if you've never had anybody sympathize or validate sympathize with you or validate your emotions, then just any tiny morsel, it's like that breadcrumbing comes in at the beginning, but it may even only be breadcrumbing in the beginning, but it may feel like a love bomb because you've never had it. If you've never had anybody care for you or show you any kind of love or put love into action at all, then just a tiny bit is going to mean the world to you. You see what I mean? They may connect with you. They may see that you have an interest in something that's, I don't know if you, is the term like a fringe topic, like something that's taboo or not talked about a lot in society, you know, that's just like a conspiracy, or, you know, just like an odd off kind of interest you may have in particular topics or mysteries about life or whatever. Somebody might see that about you and think, okay, they're probably not able to connect with a lot of people on this topic because it's not mainstream. In other words, anything that's not mainstream or widely accepted in society, they may use that and hook into that and be like, yeah, I totally know what you mean. So any way to connect with you, they're just connecting with you in any areas where you may have been neglected in the past, especially for a large part of your life. So, and as part of helping you to identify those weak areas where, you know, it may be an area where somebody who's studying people to use and abuse them, they're going to be able to identify those areas, right? Very quickly. But how are they going to identify those areas quickly? If you tell them, if you share it with them. So that's just going to help to keep you mindful of keeping it zipped until somebody has earned the trust for you to even share. A lot of times it's kind of like we have to learn that discernment. It's like we feel like we're guarded, right? But what does that really mean? So you have to, you know, write out, what does it mean to have a guard up? Like, literally, if I saw a person and I was told by, you know, a life coach or psychologist or whatever, this person right here has a wonderful, healthy shield, a boundary up, you know, how would you describe this person just interacting with them for 5 minutes, you know? Were they friendly? Were they cold? Were they just kind of neither? Were they indifferent, in other words? Were they, did they overshare? Did they not share anything personal but just talk about the weather since you only spent 5 minutes with them? So it's kind of like identifying what it means to live guarded. What does that mean? And where might your weak areas be where somebody may be able to poke a hole in your shield, right, and get through? And you know, they're not always going to use positive tactics in the beginning. They may even be bold enough to use negative tactics up front by shaming you or intimidating you, or even covert threats. Look for that kind of stuff too. So when somebody makes you feel really bad or really good, it's helpful to pause. And it's like you're literally regimenting yourself. You're consciously enacting that gatekeeper role, all right? You're self-parenting is a hot term in a lot of psychology videos, right? But you're essentially regimenting yourself, and even if you have to go to the literal act of counting in your mind, if something just kind of comes across, and again, your feelings may not catch it. If you've been conditioned to accept things that you shouldn't be accepting, right, then your feelings may not always catch it. That's where you have to use logic to catch it. And that's why this exercise that I'm encouraging you to do today in today's video is important. Identifying specifically, logically, detailing out, listing out those areas where you may have been neglected in the past. Those may be your weak points. And so if somebody ticks one of those boxes, then you may in your mind, before you respond at all, don't let this old voice from the past that used to guilt trip you make you feel like it's rude to not immediately just respond right away. You have to not be worried about seeming rude. You have to care more about protecting yourself. So just pause if something, again, it may not be a feeling that catches you. It could be, but it could also be that something ticked one of those boxes logically. And so you might in your mind literally just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you may surprise yourself that as you're consciously counting, your subconscious is churning and working on what's going on here. So the mind is just so incredible, and that's a whole nother video we could do. I'm thinking about just running off on this tangent, but I'm gonna stop there with that. But it's gonna help you. It's gonna help you to stop and just do a count of 5 or whatever it takes before you feel good and you're logically responding in a way that's not going to make you vulnerable. Okay. And just make sure you're not reacting from conditioning. Like, for example, they call it fawning. If you grew up essentially walking on eggshells all the time, that means you're just really wanting to make sure you're pleasing a person to the extreme so they don't, explode on you. Then fawning may present itself like that pressure to respond immediately. That's where you have to enact your logic, your parenting yourself, that gatekeeper role that says, no. If that person gets mad that you take a minute to think, that's on them. Every person is responsible for their own self. You're not responsible for setting them off. You see what I'm saying? Just because you're trying to protect yourself. So just kind of be really aware of that conditioning. Are you fawning? Are you trying to overly people please, overcorrect? Because maybe, a parent figure was very cruel to you, so you've just always been overly nice and giving without it being earned, to a lot of people. So, and at first it may feel unnatural to pause. You may even feel anxiety in this case. Like I said, if you were conditioned, intimidated, threatened to jump when they snap, it may create anxiety, as you're looking at this person, just projecting that expectation onto them, that they're expecting you to hurry up already. So you just have to keep that at bay. But the conscious awareness piece is critical as a first step to even be able to identify this about yourself. Do you see what I mean? To keep that anxiety under control, okay? And it may not have even been like intimidation from conditioning. Just when you're looking back, it may have been ridicule. Ridicule is hurtful, especially when it comes from someone who was supposed to be loving, like a parent figure. So even ridicule can be a strong motivator in conditioning someone to act a certain way, or to be a certain way and to do as they're told, so they're not made fun of, especially a vulnerable child. So, just try to look at things from all different angles, okay? It can just be, a lot of times these controllers, get angry at you, or they ridicule you over the tiniest things, which is why sometimes, we overcompensate, trying to appease people over the tiniest things. You know what I'm saying? That sensitivity level is just is so active, you might say. So yes. And what's interesting is, when you think about this, even when somebody is very intense with you, like a controlling person, whether they're intimidating you, they're ridiculing you, they're like, like I think of them like a puppeteer, and you're the puppet, you're on the strings. And so the focus sometimes with these controllers, the focus is on you. They try to use that in itself by putting the focus on you as a tactic to keep the attention on you, to try and keep all of their cons from being exposed. It's like they use that as a cloak for themselves, so that you don't turn the attention on them, because if you did, you might see the truth. You see what I mean? So and because they're so, sometimes they're putting all this intention on you, it can feel like they're so attuned to you. It can feel like they can almost seem like just a really good friend or a confidant, because they're so attuned. And then what's interesting is, if you pay attention, or even in hindsight, you might be able to identify that once they've hooked you in, you think, man, this person just really cares about me. At that point, right, is when they can turn the attention now on themselves and try to drum up some validation or pity from you, or things like that. A true person doesn't advertise these kind of things, right? A true person doesn't, what's the word I'm looking for? I feel like it starts with a C. Doesn't try to get pity from someone. Pity is just something, or feeling sorry, sympathy, caring for. Those kind of things are just natural responses to it, just a bad situation that a person's been through. But a true person doesn't, the word is solicit. That's what it is. A true person doesn't solicit these things, right? They don't advertise hardships, and because really what they're doing, what are they doing? They're putting on a show. You feel like you're in a show now. You have to be able to identify that kind of stuff, right? So overall, number one, if you identify and correct the reasons you may have lowered your guard and opened yourself up to trust in the past, it's going to help prevent it in the future, right? Number two, if you truly get rooted in the belief that each person is responsible for their own well-being, it's like, seeing these invisible walls around every person, seeing everyone's boundaries. That's you, and this is me, and that's your issues, and these are my issues. You're responsible for that. I'm responsible for this. When you truly get rooted in that belief, which a lot of times means identifying enmeshment from your past that you normalized, maybe in when you were growing up, there weren't boundaries, and that was part of the manipulation, part of the control. With a lot of times a toxic family situation like that, there's one person who runs the show, and nobody even feels like their own person in that family, because this one person tells everybody what to do and how to think and what's what. So that's enmeshment, my understanding of it anyway. So that's the second thing. Number one, identify your potential weak areas, the areas you may be vulnerable from, examining your past and being observant in your present. And number two, getting really rooted in the belief that each person, again, I kind of like to visualize, the walls around each person. I can see their boundaries. That's you, and you're not my monkeys, not my circus, whatever it's called. You got you and your stuff, and I got me and my stuff. And then, from there, that's a wonderful starting point, and to
to protect yourself, to help you identify other people who are operating like you, because that means that's your people right there. That's your own kind. And so and people like that are not going to mind you taking the time to be careful about allowing someone into your life, because they're going to be doing the same thing and they understand. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope that it got the wheels turning for you. I thank you for coming along today to hear the message. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.